The 1960s was an unforgettable decade for motorcycles. Manufacturers were going all out, taking risks, and bringing bold ideas to the table. But let's be real, some of those ideas were more, what were they thinking, than revolutionary. For every bike that made big profits, there was one that made riders wonder if they had accidentally signed up to be test dummies. So buckle up, or should I say rev up, to see some questionable engineering choices, and let's take a look at some of the worst motorcycles the 60s had to offer. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and follow us for more videos of the yesteryears. And stay tuned to the end to find out which Harley model made the list. First up is the 1966 Royal Enfield Crusader. A name like Crusader evokes bravery and resilience, but this bike needed rescuing more often than it saved the day. The bike was a 250cc British motorcycle built to strike a balance between affordability and performance. It was designed to be lightweight with a 21 horsepower engine. Its features made it seem like it was a good option for riders. The idea was promising, but poor build quality, especially in the engine and gearbox, were major setbacks to the Crusader's innovation. Oil leaks were so frequent that the owners often joked that it marked its territory wherever it parked. And the bike wasn't reliable because of its constant electrical failures, particularly with its Lucas electronics. The issue with the electronics was non-stop, and it was given the name the Prince of Darkness in motorcycling circles. Now that's one problematic ride. The good news is that the Crusader did evolve. Royal Enfield transitioned into producing higher capacity bikes and eventually focused on markets like India, but its line became extinct by the late 1960s. It was more of a garage queen than a road warrior. Sure, it looked the part, but owning one was a test of patience and pocketbooks. Next up, we have the '64 BSA Bantam D7. The manufacturers of the Bantam D7 promised reliability and affordability, but what they delivered was an uninspiring showpiece. Underpowered and too clumsy, it was the kind of bike you could outrun on foot. I bet if a runner challenged a rider with the bike, they would win. People often joke that the D7 was better suited for mowing lawns than hitting the open road. This bike was a 175cc two-stroke motorcycle, and it was an entry-level bike designed for the masses. It had a simple design and a basic single-cylinder engine, but the D7 suffered from underwhelming power, with a top speed barely reaching 55 miles per hour. Its drum brakes were weak and unreliable, and its suspension was inadequate for anything beyond smooth urban roads. These issues made the Bantam a frustrating ride for many. It was affordable, so it was quite popular, and the model was eventually improved with later iterations, such as the D10 and the D14, before the company collapsed in the 70s. They're now collector's items, a perfect use of the Bantam model. By the way, don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying this video. Now let's get back into it. Next up is the '62 Honda CA72 Dream. Honda had big dreams for the CA72, but unfortunately this bike felt more like a half-awake nap. This one, amongst others, was the earliest Japanese motorcycle created with plans to enter the global market. It featured a 247cc parallel twin engine and a pressed steel frame that was meant to appear modern and innovative. Its plain design didn't appeal to many riders in Western markets who preferred the classic, sporty look of British and Italian bikes. So much for entering the global markets. The engine, while reliable, offered underwhelming performance, and the handling felt disconnected. I would have hated it too. I mean, it had a lot of faults and was less fun to ride. Nevertheless, the CA72 Dream did pave the way for Honda's future success in global markets. The CA72 is quite rare now, mostly found in museums. Its boxy design might have screamed futuristic at the time, but at second glance, it screamed awkward. Its uninspiring performance adding to these faults, and you had a bike that was anything but dreamy. Next up is the '67 Ducati 250 Monza. Ducati is known for speed and style, but it looks like the 250 Monza missed that memo. The 250 Monza was part of the company's push into smaller displacement bikes. It featured a 249 single-cylinder engine, and while its design had hints of Italian finesse, the Monza had serious reliability issues. The engine was extremely difficult to tune, and its electrical system was at risk of a failure. Also, because the bike lacked the aggressive performance that Ducati fans expected, it was overshadowed by its colleagues. This model, like others, didn't last in Ducati's lineup, but its failure helped the company refocus on its strengths, producing higher performance bikes like the Ducati 750 SS. The 250 Monza was bad. And let's just say it wasn't the kind of ride that left you smiling unless you were happy to finally be parking it. But at least it played a small part in Ducati's evolution into a world-class brand. Next up is the '64 BMW R27. What would you call an attempt at elegance, but it ends up being a vibrating, sluggish mess? I would call it a disaster. That was the case for the production of the BMW R27. It was powered by a 247cc air-cooled 4-stroke single-cylinder engine that produced approximately 18 horsepower at 7,400 RPM. Quite an innovative feature for its class. But even with its sophisticated engineering, the R27 suffered from severe vibrations, making long rides uncomfortable. The rubber engine mounts, while reducing vibrations, were prone to wear and required regular maintenance to maintain their effectiveness. The single-cylinder engine, while robust, lacked the power and smoothness of the twin-cylinder models that BMW was also producing at the time. This made the R27 less appealing for riders seeking higher performance. Additionally, the bike's electrical system, particularly the 6-volt battery and generator, was a weak point, as it led to issues with starting and lighting. The braking system, consisting of drum brakes, was adequate for its time but lacked the stopping power riders expected. With so many faults in the bike, riders must have struggled a lot with it. It had a single-cylinder engine, but it worked overtime and shook your teeth loose. Classy on the outside, sure, but underneath, more drama than it was worth. Next up is the '62 Motogozi Aolo 98. The name alone gives a not-so-good vibe, and I wonder why such a joke was conceived and created in the first place. It was a 98cc 2-stroke motorcycle built for riders seeking to own a bike on a budget. It was lightweight and designed with simplicity, which made it easy to maintain, but it lacked power, with a top speed of only around 50 miles per hour. The bike's styling was also all over the place. It had this odd insect-like appearance that got mixed reviews. While some said it was unique, some said it was a terrible design. I think I agree with the latter. The build quality was adequate, but its limited performance made it less appealing in competitive markets. The line was discontinued and forgotten. The perfect description for this bike would be a little machine that seemed more at home as a movie prop than on the road. Because with a tiny engine and a fragile build, it felt like it could be knocked over by a strong gust of wind. Not exactly confidence-inspiring. Next up, we have the '61 Harley-Davidson Sprint. The Sprint was Harley's attempt to dip its toes into the lightweight market, but the result left enthusiastic customers scratching their heads. One of the most significant issues this bike had was its relatively low power compared to competing models from brands like Honda, which were beginning to gain traction in the US. Another shortcoming was the horizontally mounted engine design. It was unfamiliar to many Harley-Davidson customers, some of whom viewed the Sprint as a departure from the brand's identity. The build quality and durability of some components didn't match the standards of Harley's larger motorcycles. The bike again lacked the usual Harley-Davidson aesthetic. Underpowered and underwhelming, it didn't deliver the oomph people expected from the Harley name. It was more of a slow jog than a sprint. So there you have it, 7 motorcycles from the '60s that left us thinking. These bikes are evidence that some legendary bike companies were on their off days at the time, with their bad design, poor performance, or just being ahead of their time in the wrong way. But hey, that's the beauty of the '60s. It was a time of experimentation, where risks were taken and lessons were learned. Some of these bikes may have turned into artifacts, others into collector's items. But they're part of the history of bike evolution and representations of how far the motorcycle world has come. But what do you think? Do these bikes deserve the worst title? Or do some of them hold a special place in your heart? Let us know in the comments section below. We'd like to hear your thoughts, and until next time, please like, share, and subscribe.